All right, dear friends, I need to talk to you about something really serious today. Something that should keep every single one of us up at night. Because what we're seeing right now in April 2025 is not some random twist of history. It was predicted, it was warned about, and we ignored it. You see, back in 2019, the Varieties of Democracy Institute released a report that sounded every alarm bell you can imagine. They called it Democracy Facing Global Challenges. And honestly, reading it this morning felt like reading a prophecy. They laid it out in plain terms. We're entering a third wave of autocracy. And that's their way of saying that democracies were starting to slide backwards into authoritarianism. Not with tanks on the streets, but through lies, through polarization, and through manipulation. You see, at the time that this was written, 24 different countries were already in decline. And not obscure places that you've never heard about. I'm talking about Brazil, India, Hungary, Poland, and yes, the United States. So places where millions of people believed that they were still living in democracies, even as their rights were being quietly stripped away. And it wasn't always loud or obvious, and that's what makes it so dangerous, because the report showed how leaders started going after the press, cutting off freedom of expression, discrediting journalists, labeling the media as the enemy of the people. Sound familiar? Then they moved on to civil society, grassroots organizations, protesters, advocacy groups. They were harassed, they were surveilled, and even banned. So the rule of law was twisted in order to reshape to protect the powerful. Now, all the while, elections kept happening, but they were no longer fair, no longer free, because once you control the media and crush opposition voices, you can still keep holding elections all you want and still rig the game. The report actually called this electoral autocracy. It's the illusion of democracy. Elections without accountability, rule of law without justice, and governments that answer only to themselves. So by 2018, this was the most common form of dictatorship on the planet. Not, a military state, not monarchies, but these hollowed out, pretended democracies where the people actually had no real power. And this was before Trump turned the United States into a full-on authoritarian state, before we saw our southern neighbor fall to lies and conspiracy and corruption, before Canada found itself 2 weeks away from electing our own version of a mini Trump. But the report didn't just talk about government abuse. It pointed to something even more corrosive, this toxic polarization, this growing hatred between political sides, the idea that if somebody doesn't vote like you, then they don't deserve basic respect or even basic rights. The team that put together this research paper showed how this polarization makes people stop caring about democratic rules, stop believing in compromise. It erodes the very foundation of democracy from within. And hand in hand with that came disinformation. The rise of social media made it easier than ever for lies to spread. Foreign actors and domestic bad faith actors flooded the online spaces with propaganda and conspiracies. And the US and countries across Europe became ground zero for these digital attacks. But they didn't stop there. The report actually warned this was a global pattern and it was coming for all of us. And now, here we are. It's 2025. Trump's clawed his way back into power, and we're just 2 weeks away from Canada facing its own electoral crisis, because we know what these wannabe authoritarians want. We've seen the playbook. It starts with making people feel helpless, confused, and divided. But you see, here's the thing. They also said something else in this report, and it's something that we need to hang on to right now with both hands. They said, democracy doesn't just die, it has to be surrendered. And we haven't surrendered yet. Yes, the threat is real. Yes, the moment is terrifying, but the story isn't over. This report reminded us that even as some countries slipped into darkness, others fought their way back into the light. Malaysia, Armenia, the Gambia, mass protests, collective actions, citizens refusing to back down. It worked, and it's still working. The report was never meant to be a eulogy. It was just a warning and an invitation to rise up, to organize, to vote, and to fight like hell for the values that we believe in. And I believe that we still have that chance. So let's not look back 5 years from now wondering how we lost our freedom. Let's remember that we saw it coming and we stopped it. Together, we can be the resistance to this global wave of authoritarianism. We can be the people who stood up when it counted the most. Because democracy isn't just an idea, it's a fight, and it's our fight right now. I'm going to end this video with a quote and then some final thoughts. So this is a quote from Franklin Roosevelt, and he said that democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to do so wisely. The real safeguard for democracy, therefore, is education. And now my final thoughts are that we took education for granted, and now we're living with the consequences. So it's time to turn that around. Let's make learning accessible again. Let's make it inspiring. And let's remind everyone that education is not optional. It is essential if we want to be truly free.